you look at our tax rates back in the 60s and when you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from 0 to $75,000, maybe 10% or 15%, et cetera. But once you get to the tippy tops on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. That doesn't mean all 10 million are taxed at an extremely high rate, but it means that as you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more. So that is where she talks about the marginal tax rate, increasing the marginal tax rate in order to pay for some of the policy ideas that she is pushing for.
Okay, it's perfectly rational. It's what we had in this country from the 1940s to the 1970s, top economic time in American history, in fact, in world history. So those rates work, it's a fact. People have conveniently forgotten that fact, whether they're journalists or right-wingers or even the Democratic Party. So all of our answers, again, make perfect sense. But I'm just gonna quick note on Anderson Cooper's framing. So Nancy Pelosi's powerful, but you're occupying her office. What do you mean, but? Right? So look, none of these are egregious. It's not like there's been far worse in the media.
No, I mean, it's pretty egregious. What's implied there is egregious. What's implied there is, how dare you stand up to someone in a position of power? Which, by the way, is, if you believe in that framing and you believe that it's a terrible thing to stand up to someone in a position of power, then you don't really believe in a democratic process, you don't believe in leadership, you don't believe in new ideas or challenging old ideas.
Yeah, she could have said, I was just keeping him honest.
But for one segment, though.
Just for one segment. Anyway, and then the more important issue is the framing of, well, how in the world are you going to do the Green New Deal? I mean, imagine when Kennedy came out, and by the way, I'm sure that reporters did do this when Kennedy came out and said, we're going to go to the moon. You're going to go to the moon in that short period of time. How are you going to go to the moon? With a spaceship? Yeah, that's how we're going to go to the moon. And that's how we did go to the moon. And so we got to push ourselves. The question, and we do actually, we do push the very outer limits of what is possible in our government when we cut tax rates for the rich by $2 trillion. That brings our government to a breaking point, but everybody thinks that's perfectly normal, and nobody goes around going, how? How are you gonna do that? My God, that's gonna rob the American people of $2 trillion in tax revenue. It's gonna destroy the budget, et cetera. How are you gonna do that? No, they just do it. They just do it. They don't care about the budget. They don't care about the deficit. And Anderson Cooper never looks at him like, whoa, how would you do that? You would do it by actually trying. When you try to take care of the rich or the defense contractors, it turns out you could start 17-year wars in the Middle East. It turns out you can start wars in a dozen countries, and nobody goes, how are you gonna bomb 12 different countries at once?
So, I know I risk making this conversation go way longer than it needs to, but this is a commentary more about the media and the obsession with remaining neutral, right? Does Anderson Cooper really think that by pretending to be objective, we don't know what his biases are? Like, his biases are all over the place when it comes to this particular interview, right? So it's evident in the way that he covered the proposed tax cuts for the wealthy. It's evident in the way he frames his questions in this interview. Your biases are out there, we see them. So please spare me this nonsense about I'm a journalist and I want to remain objective. Objectivity is incredibly important, but what you do is neutrality. And then even while you do that, it's abundantly clear where your political philosophy lies.
And where your assumptions lie.
Right.
Your assumption is that no progressive priority is worthwhile and should not be attempted. But every Republican policy, no matter how disastrous it is sensible and pragmatic. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be any debate about it, but you don't find it outlandish, you find it perfectly normal and acceptable. And in Washington it has been, because Washington, unlike the rest of the country, has been massively right-wing. Why do you think you're interviewing Ocasio Cortez? Why do you think she's so popular? It's because the overwhelming majority of the country that's progressive, that's about 60% of the country, look at a poll, okay, goes, oh, thank God, finally somebody on our side. Finally, someone on our side that's allowed on television.
Right. All right, well, let's have some fun, because while Anderson Cooper, tries to hold back from sharing what his biases are, there are right-wingers who do not hold back. And Ed Rollins, a Trump supporter, is one of those people. Now, on a recent interview on Fox Business, Rollins couldn't help himself when it came to insulting both Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib. Take a look.
Some really interesting people and some very smart people. If you're going to put her out front with her mouth, which she now has attention that she's never had before, and you're going to put the little girl who wants to do pre-Reagan economics with 70% taxes, the Democrat women are going to basically be damaged bad.
Wow. I mean, which one's worse, Anna? That little girl or with her mouth?
Well, I mean, they're both pretty bad. Let's keep it real. But it's also I find it kind of funny because he's so oblivious to what the reality is. So when I saw that video over the weekend, I tweeted something about how it's fun to see the extinction of dinosaurs in real time. Because he's insulting Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's intelligence. He's a Trump supporter. He's a Trump supporter, okay? So that's it. That's all I need to say.
Intelligence.
Like, it's over.
Intelligence.
We're done. And then
you support the dumbest guy who's ever been in office. You know, the stealth fighter, it's invisible. You can't see it. You know, the clean coal, you take it out and you wash it. You support an absolute moron. Oh, nobody knew healthcare was this complicated. Did you know Puerto Rico is surrounded by water because it's an island? Okay, you want to talk about? Oh, come on. And then, like, his second thing he's oblivious to is that it's not gonna play well when you go, oh, that little girl with her running her mouth like that. I mean, to be fair, he's on Fox, so that does play well on Fox. And he's talking to Lou Dobbs, who's like, yes, that's right. Those women should shut their mouths, shouldn't they, Ed? Right? That's why we love Trump. I know, I got it, guys, I got it. But to me, actually, the third part of why he's wrong is the most important, which is the substantive thing, which is she's like, oh, we're gonna go back to the pre-Reagan years. Ed, do you know any history at all? I mean, you support a moron, so I'm not surprised that you also know nothing. Pre-Reagan years were the years that you guys all claimed were the best times in America. Oh, the good old 1950s. That's what every conservative says. Make America great again, right? The pre-Reagan years was when America had the biggest economic boom that any country has ever had in the history of the world. And during that entire time, the top marginal tax rate was between 70 to 91%. Learn some history, you dotard.
Well, Rollins wasn't the only person who went after Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In fact, Fox and Friends felt that this insanely high tax rate would be a disincentive to work. Take a look.
Taxed at 90%, why bother?
Did the gentleman refer to a fair share?
Yes.
A fair share is 90% for the government and maybe 10% kept by you? Well,
what's the incentive of working hard? And don't the people who contribute that much to society and are creating the big businesses, aren't they helping our economy?
It would be very bad news for America's economy. You don't want the government coming in and saying, well, you've made too much. You're too aggressive. You're too successful. We're going to take 90% off you. That's ridiculous.
Or they just won't do anything. The most successful people will pull back and say, I don't have to do anything. I have to create any more jobs, start any more businesses, and I'm going to pull back.
That is precisely what will happen.
So I just want to remind you guys, and most of you already know this, but just in case, look, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is talking about a marginal tax rate, right? So the amount of money that would be taxed after an insane amount of money. So let's say you've already brought in $10 million that year. Anything over $10 million would be taxed at that marginal tax rate. It does not mean that 90% of someone's income would be taken away by the federal government. It would not work that way. But of course, they very conveniently left that out of the conversation.
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons. First of all, they talk about 90%. She never said 90%. She said 60 to 70%. Okay, so then everybody in the media made it 70%, even though she said 60 to 70. And then Fox News comes in and goes, oh, that's inconvenient. Let's just call it 90. Why don't you just call it 99 while you're at it? Okay, as long as you're making up numbers, because she didn't say that. And you know, the president that had it at 91% was Eisenhower. He was a Republican. So again, they don't know anything. Steve Doocy, later in the interview, in that discussion, said, well, then that'll teach people, man, don't make $10 million. That's the lesson to be learned here, because that's when it would kick in. Again, you schmuck.
I wish I had that problem.
I know, first of all, that'd be great, right?
You know, I was gonna bring in more than $10 million this year, but I decided not to because, you know, I'm gonna get taxed very high at that marginal tax rate.
But Steve Doocy literally doesn't understand what a marginal tax rate is. He thinks once you hit 10 million, it goes back and taxes everything at 60 to 70%, including the whole 10 million. No, the whole 10 million is at a lower tax rate. The 10 million and first dollar is taxed at 60 to 70%. He's like, oh, well, you don't want to hit 10 million. No, yes, you do. First of all, it's 10 million. Second of all, the next dollar would be taxed at the higher rate. Okay, but they're ignorant on Fox News. That's not breaking news, to be honest, right? But the core of what they're saying, again, is monumentally wrong. They're saying, oh, well, then these Ubermensch, these legendary business people with all their incredible talent that they have bestowed upon us, upon the lesser people like you. Well, they would just take their talent and go home.
Go home where?
And how would they make money then? Warren Buffett has addressed this. Warren Buffett, quite the capitalist, has made a lot of money. He said, anyone who tells you that they won't work if there's a higher tax rate is the worst businessman there is. Because we're all here to make money. It doesn't, not to say that it doesn't matter what the tax rate is, but we're all gonna show up to make money anyway, of course. You know what you would be if you said, oh, you know, I do declare, it was a 52% would have been fine, but at 53% I'm going home. You know what you are then? You're a bum. You're not an entrepreneur, you're not a business person, okay? And then furthermore, the reason why the economy did so well back then was partly because what did you do? You created an incentive to reinvest in your business. You take the money out, it gets taxed at 70%. You keep the money in your business, it doesn't get taxed at all. You reinvest it. You get new machines, you get new equipment, you hire more people, and your business grows and grows, and the economy grows and grows.
No.
But if you have a lower tax rate, you've created an incentive not to do wealth creation, but to do wealth extraction. So you take the money out of the businesses, you put it in savings, that's good for you, bless your heart for doing savings, but it does not go back into the economy, and it does not go back into your businesses, and the economy does worse.
Wait, but I thought that a higher marginal tax rate would destroy the economy. Where does the destruction come in?